Good evening and welcome to News Central TV. My name is Mazino Appeal. The top stories this hour. Nigerians join rest of the world to celebrate Boxing Day, and suspected bandits kill at least 11 in Kwande Local Government Area of Benue State. Kenya police deny involvement in latest spate of abductions targeting government critics. And now coming up, the details. Now, the festive season is a time of sharing and caring, and among the groups that need our love and attention are senior citizens. While many spend their spirit surrounded by family, some elderly individuals reside in special homes. Our correspondent Benue State visited an old people's home in Lagos to see how these senior citizens are celebrating Boxing Day.
The elderly hold a special place in our society, and just like everyone else, they deserve to feel the joy of the festive season. While some are surrounded by family at home, others find companionship and care in old people's homes. For these senior citizens, the holiday season is a time to reflect, connect, and enjoy activities that keep them active and engaged.
Because when I remember that my mind spoiled today, say go come, I didn't see them. So I wasn't happy today in the afternoon. But I can't hear that they are around. It be like say they buy motor.
In African culture, caring for the elderly is traditionally the responsibility of family members. However, changing circumstances such as migration and financial challenges have made homes for the elderly a valid alternative for many.
I was told the latest residents that we had, it came in about 2-3 days ago, and by the time he was coming in, he was very apprehensive. He was telling the child, the daughter, I'm not coming, I'm not coming, I'm not coming. You know, but 2 days into his stay, the man started praying. Oh, I didn't know this was the place where bringing me. Thank you, God bless you. It is a lovely place. They are taking care of me. I'm very okay. I'm happy. And all the story has changed. Why? Because experience.
You saw people, they didn't abandon their loved ones here. They come to see them. You saw Her Royal Majesty said she wished they had known this place earlier.
The residents of this home come from different backgrounds: retired engineers, teachers, and business professionals. Among them is an 82-year-old author who is working on a new book.
The working title is Animal, Vegetable, and Mineral. It is about the people, the places, and things I have come across in my life. Any child here, I have relatives, but they have their own families as well. So my own daughter decided to bring me here. Having heard about this place and how well the people here are looked after.
The home offers a range of activities, including games, skill acquisition, and holiday celebrations to ensure the elderly remain engaged. However, providing this level of care is not without its challenges.
It can be quite challenging, especially once you're not skilled or you're not trained. What drives you in caring for older people is passion.
Some have stroke, some are diabetic, so we help them with a lot of, those things, and they are good. They are well managed.
For the staff, the festive season is an opportunity to go the extra mile, creating an atmosphere of warmth and joy. And as we continue our celebration this festive season, it is very important that we remember the elderly amongst us who have spent several years caring for us and serving the country. They are still part of the society, and caring for them is not negotiable. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Benue State.
On a sad note now, at least 11 people were reported killed by suspected armed herders who invaded some communities in Kwande Local Government Area of Benue State on Christmas Day. The attackers were said to have invaded Ityuluv, Tse Azege, and Innyievya communities in the Nkomon district of Turan in Kwande LGA, turning the Christmas Day joy into sorrow. A resident of now deserted Mbandura Council Ward, who is taking refuge in Jato-Aka Lawrence Akiriba, told newsmen that the attackers abducted 7 children, with the oldest being 6 years, while the youngest is 2 years of age. According to him, the attackers invaded Yav and Mbakyo council wards of Turan community at about 4 p.m. when most residents were at home with their families enjoying the cool breeze of the Yuletide, killing 11, injuring scores, and abducted children, while others are still missing. One person has died and 2 others injured in a tragic gas cylinder explosion at the vulcanizer's shop in Kpakungun, a suburb of Minna, Niger State capital. The incident happened on Christmas Day, with the victims identified as Zakaria Aliyu, Mohammed Usman Baba, and Umar Mohammed. Eyewitnesses reported that the incident occurred when Mohammed Usman Baba, the shop owner, used the gas cylinder for a customer. After the cylinder was used, it was replaced to be recharged. Now, Zachary, an apprentice, retrieved water to cool the cylinder after it became heated, as they typically do. However, according to eyewitnesses Faisal Avuya, the cylinder exploded as he poured water on it, scattering his body. The explosion injured Mohammed Usman Baba and his son, Umar Mohammed. Sources say Umar sustained severe abdominal injuries and will require surgery. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa on Thursday insisted that the military avoided mistakes in the airstrikes that killed 10 people. On Christmas Day, a fighter jet bombed 2 communities in the Benue Local Government Area of the state, killing at least 10 people and injuring several others. A day after the incident, the CDS visited the northwestern state and addressed journalists at the Innyievya cantonment in Sokoto. He said that investigations would be launched into the matter. The CDS called on residents not to harbor criminals in their communities and admonished media practitioners not to be used as a tool for promoting bandits. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by security expert Darlington Umaru. Darlington, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Good
Afternoon.
Yes. Now, so how does the Nigerian military ensure precision targeting during airstrikes to differentiate between combats and civilians, especially in complex conflict zones like a place like Sokoto, where you have people living amongst these insurgents?
First, it's an unfortunate situation, and in most times or sometimes we find this kind of situation at war zones. But the army has reliably said they really didn't target civilian areas, which we all know in most times that the army will not want to target civilians, to kill civilians. And what we also know is that some of these terrorists, they want to use civilians as shields. They want to run into areas where civilians are and then create this kind of hula baloo that will create talking points for people. But again, what could be the cause of some of these things are when in the course of intelligence gathering, there could be errors. We had a situation like this sometimes in Kaduna when the UAV was wrongly deployed, and for areas where they know these bandits often gather, they had an area survey with the UAV, and then the combat UAV, which eventually deployed some of those explosives that killed some innocent persons. But in this situation, apparently, from the look of things, from the explanations from both sides, it seemed as if the terrorists actually ran maybe into civilian areas in the course of pursuit. Again, that is one possibility. Another possibility could be that there was no coherence between the artificial intelligence and the really didn't meet at a point to actually confirm whether those persons, as at the time the surveillance was carried out, whether they were actually terrorists or not. But again, it's a sad situation for the military at this point in time when they are doing well. We know that the Lukarawa group has emerged and has taken over Sokoto and Kebbi. And so the military is doing everything they could within their powers to see how they could expunge this new group. And so, well, it's an unfortunate situation as it were for now.
Okay, now, Darlington, let's talk about post-strike assessment. We've got a situation on ground where the military is saying that no, they didn't make any mistakes and those who were targeted were actual insurgents, while the governor is out giving 20 million naira and 100 bags of rice to people who actually lost family members. So how does the military address these discrepancies in reported civilian deaths?
Well, what has happened, the truth on ground is that the persons who have died or who have been buried have been said to be civilians and not necessarily the terrorists. That has been established for now. And the military has said that they didn't deliberately or they didn't target any civilian territory to deliberately kill civilians. And that they still maintain their position that those they targeted were the members of the Lukarawa group. These are the discrepancies we're having at the moment. But of course, you know, the governor will move in quickly to see how they will be able to ameliorate the situation and see how to come next. The former governor was also there, Magatakada, who is now a senator. He was also there with the governor, and then I think what they are trying to do right at the moment is damage control. You know, what has happened has happened. Persons have died. That has been established. There's nobody who can take that fact away now, that those who died have died. Or whether the issue now is whether they are actually civilians or members of the Lukarawa group. The military has said the target and pursuit was on the Lukarawa members, are not necessarily civilians, but the civilians themselves and the government has said that these were persons not necessarily belonging to the Lukarawa group. And so it's neither here nor there. I think what we need right now is how to solve the situation on ground. I think that was why the governor quickly talked about the 20 million and some bags of rice to the families of those who have lost their lives. The governor also talked about paying all hospital bills for those who are injured and currently taking treatment. And so this is not the time to cast aspersions at the military. This is a time where we need to look at the situation critically and then investigate precisely what has happened. But to me, I think it was an error on the part of intelligence.
Okay, so I hear you when you say don't cast aspersions on the military, but let's define what the military sees as terrorist targets or terrorist communities. Is it because we have this issue where the Lukarawas are infusing themselves into communities, and we hear that you can't tell the difference. So how does the military determine that these communities, or these community is an insurgent community as against perhaps just regular civilian populations that have been perhaps maybe taken over or infused by these insurgents?
That can only be achieved through intelligence. Artificial intelligence and human intelligence, they have to meet at a point and then really confirm that this person. But sometimes, let me say this, please. Sometimes you know that one of the things the terrorists will want to do is to infiltrate areas where civilians are, and then find a way of creating this kind of a problem that has happened now, where pursuit will be reduced on them, where people will talk about it, whether rightly or wrongly. You know, this is one of their aims. That's why sometimes it becomes so difficult for the military to carry out in full force attacks on these terrorists, particularly those of them who come to reside amongst the people. Of course, you remember the issue of Kebbi and how these persons came into Kebbi. They were actually invited by the people themselves, but at a point in time when they now had issues, was now when they begin to call for the military to come in. So these persons, they know themselves, and one of the things they will often want to do is to reduce the trace and attack of the military on them. And then this is the kind of thing they want to achieve, using humans as civilians as shields, and then allowing the army to attack, and then at the end of the day. But I think the army should be able to deploy enough intelligence, you know, particularly when it has to do with artificial and human intelligence, and then find a way to balance it. And then if they are able to do all of this, common errors like this they happen. You know, they happen particularly when this, want to use humans as shield and they want to reside amongst these people.
Right,
it is for the people to say, we have them in these areas, give out intelligence to the military.
Okay, then. Well, Darlington Umar, I want to say thank you very much for giving us your expert opinion on the issue. Thank you.
My pleasure once again.
Now, still talking security, Boko Haram launched coordinated attacks on ISWAP strongholds in northern Borno between December 23rd and 24th. The clashes, reported by security experts Zagazola Makama, targeted areas including Tumbun Guinea, Mangari, Tumbun Saje, and Metile, leaving several ISWAP militants dead. Boko Haram reportedly seized 20 motorcycles and destroyed multiple ISWAP camps, forcing the group to abandon their bases and focus on regrouping. The Nigerian military and security agencies have not commented on the incident. This development highlights the ongoing power struggle between these factions in the region. And in the meantime, the federal government has strongly denied allegations made against it in a viral video by the military leader of its neighbor, the Republic of Niger, that the President Bola Tinubu administration had concluded plans with France to destabilize the country. In a statement signed by Nigeria's Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, the federal government described General Abdurrahman Tichani his claims as groundless and absurd because Nigeria had never engaged in any overt or covert alliance with France or any other country to sponsor terrorist attacks or destabilize the Republic of Niger in the wake of the coup d'etat that ousted a democratically elected government in that country. Now a break, and when we come back, Abia government to commence payment of compensations to landowners. We have the details after. Welcome back. Now the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, Matthew Kuka, has said that the recent deaths at food distribution centers show how desperate many Nigerians have become. Last week, more than 67 people died in stampedes while trying to get food aid in Oyo, Anambra, and Abuja. Speaking in his Christmas message, Kuka said the deaths could have been prevented if the government had done more to help people struggling with Nigeria's economic problems. He described the tragedies at Okija, Ibadan, and Abuja as showing the situation of desperation that citizens have been thrown into. Earlier, Executive Director Not Too Young to Lead Initiative, Elvis Akbobi, shared his thoughts on the news.
From NIMS, the highest body of policy-making body in Nigeria, and I was taught that everything rises and falls on leadership. And it's the duty of the government to provide an enabling environment, mostly with the welfare of its citizens. Not only as we commend President Tinubu in some areas, but at the moment, the welfare of the common man is key, and you agree with me that from most of the interviews I've watched, and you've even done with people, had with people, everybody's complaining with the hardship, hiking foodstuff and all that. And I think it's time him and his team start down and make policies to regulate food prices of things in the market to be able to, create a better life for the common Nigerian. For the stampede and the policy we experienced in the past, the past week, for me, as a result, it reflects again that there's hunger in the land. People can do anything just to, feed.
And now, since it's Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, we're going to be joining our News Central correspondent Bennett Akede, who is at the Ikeja City Mall, and he'll be telling us exactly what people are or how they're celebrating their Boxing Day. Bennett Akede, it's good to have you on the news this evening.
Thank you for having me, Mazino.
Now, Bennett, we'd like to know exactly what's happening, and then maybe you'll give us your definition of exactly what Boxing Day is, because from what I know, it's supposed to be on Boxing Day. But tell us what the scenario is like at the Ikeja City Mall.
All right, well, at Ikeja City Mall here, Mazino, it's a, I'd say it's a whole crowd, basically a crowd of people, or fun seekers, as we've come to use the term in Ikeja here in Lagos. Basically, looking over my shoulder, you can see there's a whole crowd of people, so to speak. Of course, obviously, we are not allowed to take our cameras inside the parking lot of the mall. But for what you can see around me, people are going in and coming out. Now, I'll start from outside to start with, first of all. Now, there's a huge, crowd of people in this area, almost causing traffic in some parts. I had to take the intervention of certain traffic officials. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty much literally trying to fight off people from crossing the front of my camera. That's how many people we have here, and that's how the crowd is, almost uncontrollable. You have people who are doing their own personal business outside here, from people who are selling water to selling soda drinks, selling biscuits and everything, and even people who are painting the faces of kids and selling balloons, as a matter of fact. And then it's from here that the actual celebration begins, before then going into the mall. I'd also like to add here that, of course, at some point people will need cash to use, so you have the infamous POS operators who also are standing here with their terminals or with their units, trying to help people get as much cash as they can, such that they can use to spend inside of the mall. Going inside the mall, I don't know if we have those shots yet from overhead. We're trying to see if we can get our drone, just into the air to catch what's going on inside, because like I mentioned earlier, it's pretty much impossible. We're not allowed to go in with our camera. So from inside, you can see that there is a huge number of vehicles in there trying to park, and then this line of cars right behind me right now are the cars that are trying to get into the mall. I did mention earlier that these cars were causing some kind of traffic on this road here in Ikeja, but eventually the whole crowd has been controlled and directed, and now they are able to move in swiftly inside. It's only that it's quite challenging to get in, so the traffic now is just here trying to get into the mall. But all the same, it's a huge crowd of people. I can only imagine what's going on inside the various stores inside the mall right there, if you have this number of people outside in their vehicles and outside standing here just catching fun, as we say here in Lagos.
Well, Bernard, it's very interesting that you should mention the infamous POS operators, but I wanted to know, do you think what you see now reflects the times with the economy the way it is, but people are still out celebrating? One might say that the celebrations that they're seeing this year far outweighs what we had last year. From your perspective, what is it like?
From my perspective, Mazino, I'll tell you that this time next year, you'll probably be asking me the same question. And that's because I think this time last year, we were asking ourselves the same question too. Now, if we follow the trends in Nigeria with every passing year, we keep saying the same thing. Things are harder, things are tougher, the economy is more challenging, things are more expensive. But people will still come out, regardless, to find ways to celebrate. Only that their modes of celebration, like every other thing in Nigeria, has evolved and will continue to evolve, where people will begin to celebrate according to the amount that they have in their pockets. Now, I did mention to you earlier that people now, as at this time last year, people were using ATM machines, I believe, trying to get cash. Now people are using POS terminals trying to get cash. What would have been costing maybe 10,000 naira before now costs way more. So now people are finding ways to get diffusion brands, to use a fashion term, where people don't go for the major thing, but they go for smaller units of the major thing that they would have wanted to get, so that they can still have some semblance of enjoyment, if you like. Nigerians are the kind of people who would always, in one way or the other, adapt to the situations that they find themselves in, and that's exactly what you can see around me. You will always find people going to the mall to celebrate, whether they're going into the stores to buy things or not. You would always have people going to the beaches, if the beaches are active, to celebrate, whether they're able to afford a tent at the beach or not. So that basically is what it is. But still, I can assure you that the same people who have found one or two ways to make themselves feel happy will still complain about how difficult the economy is and how tight the situation in the country is, regardless of how they find, no matter how small, a way to celebrate during the festive season.
Now, Bernard, we're showing right now visuals from our drone of what it looks like inside of the Ikeja City Mall, and it seems very, very busy. So I'm wondering what the traffic is like around that area, and if it's affecting vehicular movements that are not directly going to the mall.
Well, vehicular movement was affected initially, but now it's begun to clear. And it's clearing because, as I did mention earlier, we've been able to have some traffic officials clear up the road around the mall. So all we have now is that they are directing traffic that is going into the mall. So all you can get is very, very slow movement of vehicles along the lane that has been created to divert traffic from the major road all the way down into Ikeja City Mall. So this queue, if you can see it now, this queue or trail of vehicles will take a while before they can eventually make their way inside the parking lot. Remember that first of all, there has to be adequate parking space for these vehicles to have before going in. And creating that adequate parking space, regardless of how large the parking lot is, eventually seems to be some kind of challenge, you know. So, but thankfully, again, as I mentioned, the traffic officials here have been able to create free-flowing traffic on the road here in Ikeja. But getting into the mall, you know, is still quite a Herculean task.
Well, thank you very much, Bernard. It looks like it's a jolly evening out there, and perhaps maybe you can catch some... No, do come back to the office. Thank you very much, Bernard. Moving on now, the Abia State government has announced plans to commence compensation payments to individuals, corporate entities, and also organizations whose lands have been acquired for the Abia Industrial Innovation Park, the AIPP, or rather the AIIP, in Ipu-Ukwa West Local Government Area by the end of December 2024. The AIIP project will be hosted by about 7 communities in Ukwa West Local Government Area of Abia State. At a recent town hall meeting in Owaza to sensitize members of the community on government's plans for the acquired lands, Commissioner for Lands and Housing in the state, Chaka Chukwemerije, assured of their welfare, prompt compensation, and encouraged them to complete all necessary documentation for easy identification for payments.
Government is about to break ground on about 5 different housing projects scattered across Abia, and Ukwa West is going to house one of those projects, and compensation will be paid. Gone is the era when government acquires your land and sits on it and does nothing with it and does not pay compensation and goes behind, fascinates the land and sells to his cronies. Aibo a talk and do government.
Our people, Asa, Ukwa, Owaza, Ozak, all these communities, we have an outstanding record of hospitality to investors. And I want to believe that that cooperation will continue. Even when the various companies that will operate here, you will extend that cooperation to them. That is my belief.
Now, from the implementation of salary increments for judicial officers to controversial court orders and constructions of residence for judges, as well as the swearing in of a new Chief Justice of Nigeria, the judiciary remained a center of attention in 2024. Through expert perspectives, News Central's Igbalani Omoni examines the year's developments in the judiciary, their implications for the rule of law and promotion of accountability within the legal system.
The year 2024 commenced on a positive note for the Nigerian judiciary as President Bola Tinubu demonstrated a commitment to supporting the judicial branch by doubling its budget to 342 billion naira, an increase from 165 billion naira. However, the approval of a 300% salary increase for judicial officers by President Tinubu generated controversies and debates. Despite the reforms and initiatives undertaken, the global and national perception of the Nigerian judiciary is increasingly one of compromise, with growing calls for transparency, efficiency, and accountability. The visible entanglement of the judiciary leaders in politically charged events, coupled with rulings that seem to favor and have been utilized as a weapon, and to settle impasses for both the executive and political elite, continues to erode its integrity.
I've been to places where access to justice
is taken so seriously that you are not allowed to even go close to a judge. You are not allowed to organize any party, to give any gift to any judge, and you're not allowed to do all that. There's an institution that should manage all that, and that institution should not abdicate that responsibility to a governor of a state or a minister of the FCT.
The Nigerian judiciary has faced criticism due to conflicting rulings from courts of coordinate jurisdiction. A recent example is the multiple judgment on the People's Democratic Party's National Convention, with 4 rulings delivered within 2 days, and the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission's local government election. The Supreme Court's ruling on local government autonomy has also sparked controversy, with many states yet to implement the decision. The executive power over the judiciary, particularly the president's authority in appointing the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the Chief Judge of State for state governors, has raised concerns about judicial autonomy. The recent involvement of the Minister of the FCT in building houses for judges has elicited criticism of potential inducement.
Where are the judges living? They have no hope.
If any state judiciary anywhere in Nigeria, when I mean state judiciary, you know what I mean, like Edo State, Lagos State, Delta, and Anambra State, Imo State, wants to carry out any programs that is above 1 million naira, it must be approved by the governor. How can you say that is a judiciary? How can that be a judiciary? The same governor that have cases in their court is the one that approves expenditure for them to carry out programs and objectives. If the governor does not buy a car for any judge, no judge will have a car in Nigeria.
Additionally, there is a significant case backlog, with records showing over 60,000 pending cases in federal courts. On a positive note, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, the newly appointed Chief Justice of Nigeria, is keen on eradicating laziness on the bench.
There was a reduction in case disposal as some judicial officers failed to deliver a single judgment in 1 quarter. This is simply unacceptable.
Determined to instill discipline, the CJN has taken actions such as dismissing the Imo Chief Judge and Yobe Grand Kadi for age falsification, suspending judges from Rivers and Anambra for misconduct, and considering 30 petitions from its Preliminary Complaints Assessments Committee. Despite all the reforms, there remains a heavy burden of safeguarding judicial independence, especially concerning election petitions.
There has to be a no-go area for the courts to take a decision on the outcome of an election, because gradually we are beginning to see a situation where it is the courts that decide the election, not the people that decide the election, and this has to stop.
The courts should have the courage to reject results that show clear that they are manipulated.
Judges within the system are now faced with decisions that could either restore the public faith or deepen the narrative of judicial partiality.
The common man simply says, God did, when you offend him. Whereas a rich man will say, we'll meet in court. And when the government feels harassed, either by the media or the human rights community, the government will tell you, go to court. But for the ordinary people, they don't go to court. They can't go to court.
The whole idea is improving accessibility to justice.
While there are still so many things to be sorted as regards infrastructure and the use of technology, observers and legal experts alike agree that the road ahead would be demanding, requiring sustained efforts, political will, and a commitment to upholding the rule of law. Anything less would further betray the sacred role of the judiciary in 2025. In Lagos 4 News Central, I am Igbalani Omoni.
Coming Coming up, Kenya police deny involvement in abductions of critics. We have the details shortly. Join us then. Welcome back. Now, Kenya's police on Thursday denied involvement in the latest spate of abductions targeting government critics. Kenyan security forces have been accused by multiple human rights groups of carrying out dozens of illegal detentions since massive anti-government protests in June and July. Recent research, according to Human Rights Watch, suggests a covert group of officers from several security organizations, including military intelligence and an anti-terrorism squad. However, the police have distanced themselves from the disappearances. According to a statement from the Inspector General Office, the National Police Service is extremely alarmed by the persistent claims that police officers in Kenya are complicit in kidnappings. The latest disappearances have again targeted young social media users who criticize the government of President William Ruto. Now, at least 12 children have died from malnutrition this month alone in a rapid support forces controlled area at Sudan's capital, highlighting the deepening humanitarian crisis in the war-torn country. The South Belt Emergency Room reported that more than 5,300 children in the area are currently suffering from malnutrition. The area, which includes the neighborhoods of Al-Ingaz, Al-Azari, Al-Salama, and Mayo, has been under RSF control since the conflict erupted in April. The worsening situation is attributed to the closure of 55 community kitchens known as the Kayas, coupled with soaring food prices and dwindling financial resources among residents. The conflict between the RSF and the Sudanese army has ravaged the country, displacing millions and leaving many without access to basic necessities. Staying in Sudan, where at least 10 paramilitary fighters allied with Sudan's army were killed and others wounded in a rapid support forces drone attack on a training camp. The attack targeted the Al-Makil camp, located approximately 35 kilometers southwest of Sendi in River Nile State. The camp houses recruits from eastern Al Jazeera state and fighters from allied movements undergoing military training. The RSF launched over 10 suicide drones at the camp. The Sudanese Army's 3rd Infantry Division said it shot down most unmanned aircraft. Al-Amin Mohammed Al-Imam, alternate head of the popular resistance in Sendi locality, confirmed the attack and the death toll. He said the bodies of 10 fighters were transported to the morgue in Sendi. Now, Chadian army on Thursday says France has handed over its first military base as part of the withdrawal of its military forces from Chad. It stated that the base at Faya Lego in the north of the country had been handed over and that it would inform the public about progress concerning the withdrawal of French forces from bases in the eastern city of Abeche and capital N'Djamena. Police authorities in Norway are reporting a bus accident that is believed to have left dozens killed. The accident happened in the Hadsel district on Norway's northwestern coast. Public broadcaster NRK reported that the bus came off the road and ended up partially in a body of water. The exact number of people that have died is unclear, but Bent R. Ellenston, Chief of Staff of the Norland Police District, said he believed that there were between 60 and 70 people on board the bus. Nordland Communications Manager Randy Agelson said additional resources, including personnel, ambulances, helicopters, and aircraft, had been called in to transfer injured people to hospitals. And Russia has accused the Ukrainian security services of instigating a spate of arson and bomb attacks on banks, post offices, and police cars across the country. According to Vadim Vaidov, Major General of the Russian police, Ukrainian security services are behind the organization of these crimes and called for vigilance. Russia has seen a wave of vandalism and small-scale attacks since it launched its campaign in Ukraine in 2022.
В ряде регионов страны отмечается увеличение количества умышленных преступлений, связанных с попытками поджогов и подрывов административных зданий и полицейских автомобилей, дестабилизации работы банковских и почтовых учреждений. Как показывает практика, за организацией подобных преступлений стоят украинские спецслужбы. Их сотрудники или пособники, используя в том числе различные методы психологического воздействия, вводят граждан в заблуждение и провоцируют на противоправные действия. МВД России призывает граждан повысить бдительность и не вступать в контакт с неизвестными собеседниками по телефону или через иные средства коммуникации. Если же это произошло, критически относиться к любой полученной от них информации, перепроверять ее.
China warns that Manila's plans to acquire a US-built mid-range missile system will lead to geopolitical confrontation and an arms race in Asia. Chinese Foreign Minister spokesperson Mao Ning, while speaking at a press conference, said the Philippine side is working with the United States to introduce the Typhoon system, and it is placing its own security and defense in the hands of others.
菲方配合美方引入低风，将自身安全和国防拱手于人，把地缘对抗和军备竞赛风险引入域内，对地区和平安全构成实质性威胁。这样的行为究竟是基于谁的利益？又何谈独立外交？这是典型的害人害己。
The Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian Communications Commission have jointly instructed deposit money banks and mobile network operators to resolve the protracted 250 billion naira unstructured, supplementary service data debt. Additionally, the directive introduced updated operational guidelines for USSD services. Tajuddin Ibrahim, Director of Research and Strategy at Chapel Hill Denham Securities, shared his perspective on the issue, describing it as a long-standing point of contention. He also reflected on whether implementing a structured payment plan earlier could have eased tensions and reduced the debt, which has now reached 250 billion naira, and he did this on Business Edge.
There was no clear, statement of, who is responsible for what, and there were also no laid down rules and regulations around, timeline in terms of, when in anything that is incurred by the mobile telecommunication operators. There were no timelines around, when, all of such debt, should be cleared. No doubt, because we are talking about, businesses in this case, there will be payables, there will be receivables. So, but there were no, clear indication around, when those payables or receivables, should last. And also, there were no indication of any penalties by either of the two regulators around, who is defaulting in terms of the laid down agreement by both industries. I think, the new directive, by the NCC and the CBN is going to address all of those, loopholes that previously existed in terms of how the banks and the telecommunication operators, were operating the US.
And that's all this hour, but before we go, let's take another look at some of the top stories we brought your way. Nigerians have joined the rest of the world to celebrate Boxing Day, and suspected bandits have killed at least 11 in Kwande Local Government Area of Benue State. We also told you that Kenya police have denied involvement in the latest spate of abductions targeting government critics. Now, to remember that you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422 Star Times, channel 274 Able TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.